Hello, my name is Lindsay Sjuts. Thank you for joining today's Family Office Network's webinar series featuring Revance. I want to briefly introduce our speakers today, Tobin Schilke and Dustin Sjuts. Tobin Schilke is Revance's Chief Financial Officer. He brings more than 20 years experience in the global biopharma arena, with extensive experience raising capital, completing mergers and acquisitions, and providing financial leadership in support of commercial enterprises. From 2016 to 2018, Toby served as Chief Financial Officer at Alcogen. Prior to that, he spent 13 years at Roche Green Tech in a variety of finance and operational roles. Dustin Sjuts is Revance's Chief Commercial Officer, Aesthetics and Therapeutics. He is an accomplished sales and marketing executive, bringing more than 20 years of cross-functional leadership in the biotechnology, medical device, pharmaceutical, and healthcare technology fields. At the end of today's presentation, we will have time for Q&A. Please use your questions chat option on your screen to send over any questions that you have so we can answer them accordingly. And with that said, Toby and Dustin, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thanks, Lindsay. Really appreciate the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be hosted by the Family Office Network. And just one point for clarity, I work for Genentech, not Green Tech. So like Lindsay said, I'm the CFO of Revance, and I'll be kicking off the presentation. And then as we get into the tougher part of the meat of the slides, Dustin, our Chief Commercial Officer, will be walking you through that. So I'm really excited to share the story of Revance, a company that we feel is at a transformative phase of growth. This is a short company overview, and then we'll spend some time on Q&A to talk about the opportunity. So can I have the next slide? Yes, as you see here is the forward-looking statement, and I just want to post these before I start making comments that will be forward-looking in nature. And we encourage you to read this and all of our risk factors that are included with our SEC filings, Form 10K and Form 10Q. With that, I'll turn to the next slide. Let me give you a high-level overview of the company and where we sit today. We're an innovative biotech company at the cusp of commercialization. On the aesthetic side of our company, we are anchored by three differentiated assets. Our core asset being DaxibotulinumtoxinA for injection, which is a neuromodulator. This is in the same category as the brand leader Botox, sold by Legacy, Allergan, and currently now by AbbVie. This neuromodulator is set for an FDA approval with a Prescription Drug User Fee Act date of November 25th of this year. Our second aesthetic asset is the RHA Filler Collection, which is based on the latest Swiss technology, which we are launching currently this month. Lastly, our innovative aesthetics fintech platform, which we have recently acquired, that provides a distinctive go-to-market strategy, wrapping our products with a great services offering. Turning to the therapeutic side, our core asset, DaxibotulinumtoxinA, is being studied in several late-stage clinical trials. We will talk more about those during the course of the presentation. And lastly, we've leveraged partnerships to extend our cash runway, access different markets, and tap future potential diverse revenue streams. First of all, with a partnership with Mylan, or now soon to be called Vitreous, in the short-acting neuromodulator category, and secondly, with Fosun Pharma, accessing the Chinese market for our core asset, Daxibotulinum. The key takeaway is that we're commercializing with innovation and a proven clinical data in a category that sits at the nexus of healthcare and lifestyle. Now let's take a look at the overall market. Jeannie, can you turn to the next slide? Great. So we're entering the attractive growing markets. Each one of these markets is large and growing consistently. Over the last decade or so, each of these segments has been growing at high single digits to low double digit, driven by consumer trends, favorable demographics, and increasing utility for these products and services. These trends are expected to continue and remain durable even with the new normal economic environment shaped by the COVID pandemic. In the neuromodulator, the first category, which is currently a $5.1 billion global opportunity, the growth has been driven by new products, new innovation, and neuromodulators being seen as more of a lifestyle versus an aesthetic play. Category is led again by Botox, and there has not been new innovation introduced to the marketplace in over 30 years. The second category, the hyaluronic acid-based dermal fillers, is currently right now a $1 billion market in the US alone, and that's where our opportunity sits with our collaboration with Teoxane for our RHA lines. And again, these are a broad range. We're entering with a broad range of products to address major needs in the aesthetic practices for facial wrinkles, folds, and volume lift applications. And lastly, we have a distinctive opportunity with our fintech platform that complements our product platform, which we're really excited to have closed that deal in July. Next slide, please. 2020 is our year of transformation as we move from a research and development stage to a commercial stage company. We've set some key milestones at the beginning of the year and indicated by check boxes on the slide. We're proud of our delivery, even with the backdrop of the COVID pandemic. And lastly, we have some really exciting milestones in the next 4 months. First of all, the potential FDA approval of Daxibotulinum, and then several meaningful data readouts of Daxibotulinum in therapeutics, and also one in aesthetics. So starting with our read for cervical dystonia and plantar fasciitis, and then upper facial lines, and then at the beginning of next year in upper limb spasticity. So really, really exciting times at Revance. Next slide, please. So where do we go? And let's talk about Daxi and double click on that asset for a second. Let's outline the underlying promise for that slide, for that asset. First of all, it is the first and only neuromodulator with a proprietary peptide. And this proprietary peptide stabilizes the core neurotoxin and facilitates the delivery of that payload to the specific neuromuscular junction. This science is translated into significant clinical benefits when compared to Botox in our phase 2 clinical trials, and a consistent duration and response benefit compared to all other neuromodulators currently on the market, and demonstrated with the largest ever aesthetic clinical trial program for glabellar lines. Thus, we're creating a new category of long duration neuromodulator products, as we've shown nearly twice the duration of other products on the marketplace. And lastly, we're the only US-based manufacturer of these products with our headquarters and manufacturing facility in Newark, California. Next slide, please. Now turning to our resilient hyaluronic acid, or RHA, collection of dermal fillers. The innovation that I talked about in our neuromodulator business has been complemented by our recent licensing deal to bring this product, the RHA product, to the US marketplace. This is sourced from a French-Swiss company known as Teoxane SA. This filler innovation has been made possible by the manufacturing process. This filler and product is processed under longer and more gentle conditions versus currently marketed HA fillers. And that is designed to mimic the natural hyaluronic acid found in the skin. The resulting benefit is that when the filler is in place, it moves more naturally with a facial expression, while still correcting the static wrinkles and folds or providing lift and volume. And that's what our consumers want. They're not seeking a frozen face, they're seeking correction that moves dynamically. And that's pulled forward in the FDA label as the RHA filler line is the only HA filler that's indicated for the correction of dynamic wrinkles and folds. We've been pleased by the reception of this product in the marketplace so far, and Dustin will elaborate in greater detail on the product in his introduction to the marketplace. Next slide, please. In terms of our product pipeline progression, again, our core asset is daxibotulinum, and that's really proven to be a pipeline within that product. First of all, daxibotulinum in the aesthetic side, our most advanced indication is glabellar or frown lines, and those are the lines between your eyebrows or sort of your 11s. And that's furthest along. We have submitted all of our pivotal and safety data to the FDA last year in 2019 and are looking forward to a PDUFA date of November 25th this year. You can also see that we've studied Daxi in a broad range of other injectable facial aesthetic indications: forehead lines, lateral canthal lines, and upper facial lines. And so we're looking forward to reading out our upper facial lines, which is the use of daxibotulinum in glabellar lines, forehead lines, lateral canthal lines, all together later this year. Turning to our RHA collection, Tioxane has generated exciting phase 3 clinical data on our RHA1 dermal filler, which is another SKU which will broaden the utility of this for our customers. And again, this is under the FDA review process right now, and we anticipate this a 2021 approval. Importantly, this is a really big year from a therapeutics data readout in daxibotulinum for cervical dystonia, which is currently undergoing phase 3 trials right now, plantar fasciitis, which is in phase 2, and upper limb spasticity. All of this, which is supposed to read out in the next 5 months. Lastly, we'll touch on our biosimilar collaboration with Mylan, where we're preparing a clinical trial program, and we still have a topical program in the background. Next slide, please. Now I'm really pleased to turn the presentation over to Dustin Sjuts, our Chief Commercial Officer. Take it away, Dustin.
Thanks, Toby. As Toby mentioned, Revance is in a very unique position in that we have two distinct opportunities. One in the cash pay, highly growing lifestyle sector with Revance Aesthetics, and another in the more traditional and also ever growing therapeutic set. So we'll talk first specifically about Revance Aesthetics and our ability to create a new category within this growing marketplace. Next slide, please. We start with our offering of both products and services. I thought it might be important to take a quick step back and explain the differences between a toxin and a filler. And you'll hear us say neuromodulator, neurotoxin. That word's a little bit interchangeable. And then you'll hear fillers or dermal fillers. So one quick way we like to explain it is for neurotoxins in the aesthetic space, the neuromodulators, if you have wrinkles when you move your face, when you make animation, when you smile, or when you frown, those are typically treated by the neuromodulator neurotoxin. If you have wrinkles or volume deficiencies or shaping that needs to be done when you're not moving your face, those are corrected by dermal fillers. The majority of the market starts with neurotoxins, and then later in kind of their life cycle, in terms of patient life cycle or consumer life cycle, they add fillers. The current data is roughly around 60 to 70% of patients ultimately get a filler and a toxin over time together. So that's why it's critically important from a patient set selected perspective to have both a neuromodulator and a dermal filler. And the offices in medical aesthetics typically offer both toxins and fillers. And so we'll start with what Toby mentioned as our key asset, which is daxibotulinum toxin A for injection, which is underway to be approved hopefully in the November timeframe. Then we've added the RHA collection of dermal fillers with the US distribution rights, the first and only FDA-approved dermal filler for the correction of dynamic facial wrinkles and folds. And why this is important is as the evolution of aesthetics has done, you want to have a very natural look, and you want to be able to have this volume correction in the face while also being able to move. And the RHA collection was designed for that. And then, as we've mentioned, this aesthetic space is really oriented around 30,000 or so injectors, with the majority of the volume being the top, call it 5 or 10,000 injectors. And they really rely on a value proposition beyond products and also services. So with the acquisition of our fintech platform, HintMD, we'll be able to have an ecosystem that improves the practice economics as well as patient experiences. Next slide, please. If you look at first and foremost the clinical program for our DaxibotulinumtoxinA for injection focused on glabellar lines, you'll notice that we have all programs completed. We had positive data for Sakura 1, 2, and 3, with more than 4,500 treatments in that Sakura program, which makes it the largest aesthetic glabellar lines indication program in the history of neuromodulators for toxins, or neuromodulators in aesthetics. With that data, we also know that in practices, they use these neuromodulators beyond the glabellar lines area, and they use them in other areas of the face, specifically the top third, or things above the nose. And so in order to inform the dosing pattern, dose range, and our overall data, we have started and completed a forehead lines dose ranging study, as well as lateral canthal lines dose ranging study, with the results being issued in June. And we were happy to note that at least one of the 4 doses that we chose in forehead lines demonstrated, or both actually, demonstrated a measurable treatment effect in 100% of subjects at 4 weeks, with median duration of effect in forehead lines being 27 weeks and 24 weeks in crow's feet, which strengthens our understanding of the uniqueness of daxibotulinum and to drive a very different consumer benefit beyond what is on the market today. We took that information from both the glabellar lines study in Sakura, our forehead lines and lateral canthal lines study, combined that, and then kicked off a combination study, which will be the combination of both forehead, glabellar lines, and crow's feet. It's well underway and will help us explore that final dosing and injection pattern. We'll be releasing top-line results from this study in 4th quarter of 2020. Next slide, please. If we take a dive specifically in the glabellar lines trial, the primary efficacy was outstanding. We had a proportion of subjects who achieved a greater than 2-point composite response, maximum frown rate, at more than 73% for Sakura 1 and 74% for Sakura 2, stating that this product that you can see visually in that second picture really provides the result that the consumer and the physician want at week 4. The adverse events associated with this product are in line with those that are on the market today, with most common treated adverse events being mild to moderate headache and injection site pain. What was really unique to this product specifically is our median duration of effect. At least 24 weeks was observed on multiple secondary endpoints, including time to loss of none or mild or time to return to baseline. Why this is significant is with this data, you're allowed to potentially have 2 times a year treatments that would unlock an annual correction with only 2 visits. To give you some context, today, in order to achieve that annual correction with currently marketed neuromodulators, you would need to visit the office 4 times a year. Next slide, please. Take a look at the figure here, which is the graphical representation of what we call the Kaplan-Meier curve. You can see the story come to life when we plot the results over time. The top line on this graph are those from our Sakura program that I mentioned, our glabellar lines indication program. The lower lines on the graph are the currently marketed neuromodulators, notably the ones we're most comfortable with is Botox Cosmetic. Highlights here are that we had very consistent results in all Sakura programs, Sakura 1, 2, and 3, with daxibotulinumtoxin type A for injection, showing meaningful treatment effect beyond week 24. If you look at the competitive data set, you will also see consistency on the currently marketed neuromodulators, but the duration of effect is also consistent to drop off around that week 16. This category hasn't seen meaningful innovation in more than 30 years, and we're excited that our data supports the allowance of potentially 2 times a year treatment, which would change the treatment paradigm for neuromodulators in the aesthetic space. Next slide, please. Beyond the clinical data, we've mapped out the formulation differences for the currently marketed neuromodulators, starting with the volume of injection of the products. In the neuromodulator space, there isn't really a standard measure for the unit calculations for each product, so you'll see a variety of units or doses across the category, ranging from 20 units with Botox Cosmetic up to 50 units for Dysport. What is unique and what is a commonly measured standard is the amount of active ingredient or drug product for each, in this case. That is really measured in the nanograms of botulinum toxin. So you'll see 0.18 nanograms for Botox Cosmetic, as 0.18 nanograms for Daxibotulinum. Why this is unique, and I take an analogy back to almost like a Tylenol pill or something. There's pills that are large pills that have 1,200 milligrams of acetaminophen, and small pills that have the same amount of acetaminophen in the product, being 1,200 grams. So the carrier is a bit different, but the active drug that is working on the effect is the same. And that's the thing here. So you'll find is that we use the same amount of active neuromodulator as Botox Cosmetic, but yet we're able to achieve very different duration of effect and efficacy effects from the current marketed products. How we do that in our formulation is very unique, and Toby mentioned this, in that we use a proprietary stabilizing peptide as in conjunction with the 0.18 nanograms of the active ingredient. This allows our formulation to be free of accessory proteins. It allows it to be free of animal-derived components, and allows it to be free of human serum albumin, which makes it one of the most modern and unique products in this category, the first and only to utilize a peptide. You see, as we talked about earlier, the response rates are high, and the real difference is in that duration of response. And you'll see all the competitive duration responses to be laid out here in the graph. Next slide, please. On the RHA side, we're the first company to launch a full range of products during our initial launch phase, in launching RHA 2, 3, and 4. Each of these products is formulated with unique properties that allow for versatility in a variety of skin types and facial areas. The RHA collection will be expanded in 2021 with an additional product upon approval in RHA 1, focused on those perioral lines, those small lip lines around the mouth. But beyond that, we've partnered with Tioxane SA, as Toby mentioned, who focuses solely on hyaluronic acid innovation. We're focused on new innovations and new indications that we can bring to the marketplace, as well as possible next generation fillers in a category, and they have an HA cosmeceutical line. So we have full access to all innovations in the United States market from Tioxane during the length of our contract. Next slide, please. How is Tioxane doing? Why were we so confident in Tioxane as a partner? Toby mentioned a bit of how unique this product has been formulated, and that is the most recent innovation in hyaluronic acid, being that it was created in 2015, with some of the market leaders in the United States being created as late as 2008. In Europe, Tioxane has 5 affiliates where they have direct access to the market through their own employees. They garnered an impressive 9% market share. And what's unique about this number is that they do this with the HA alone. They do not have a partnership, nor do they have a neuromodulator in their bag of offerings. And we mentioned to you early on that toxins are the entry into the marketplace, and then filler comes behind that for many, many consumers. And so the fact that they were able to achieve 9% without a neuromodulator bundle was impressive, and helps set the stage for how we will drive this market with innovation, with both the bundle of a neuromodulator product and DaxibotulinumtoxinA type A for injection, our dermal filler, and also our services platform in HintMD. Next slide, please. We talk a lot about our products, but in this space, to really differentiate, you have to have a services platform and a loyalty platform. You'll see in this space, both the AbbVie organization as well as the Nestle Skin Health or Galderma organization have invested very heavily in these types of service programs designed to drive value to the physician as well as consumer loyalty. We took a unique and strategic approach to acquire HintMD, which will power these prestige patient experiences today and in the future, with starting first with a smart payments platform. And I liken this to, if you've been to restaurants recently or others, you'll see they bring you out a credit card terminal machine. It may say Toast on it or Clover. These types of smart payment platforms allow you to have a lot of data access and analytics to that transaction, and allows us to integrate specifically into the practice flow just how they treat patients today. We also then will be expanding this payments platform through technology to allow for subscriptions and memberships, driving more revenue to the practice, and as well as loyalty programs for both the physician and the consumer. Think of it like your integrated Starbucks loyalty within a practice. And what's very unique about this, and it's been well received in the marketplace, is a lot of the manufacturers today focus on driving consumer loyalty to the manufacturer and are agnostic to the physicians. However, this being integrated into the practice allows our focus to be driving consumer loyalty in line with the practices and the physicians that are loyal to us and our products. And so that's been very well received. And lastly, this is an open platform which allows us infinite opportunities to partner with other aesthetic companies and allow the loyalty programs to be run through the practice. Next slide, please. If we look at the standalone revenue opportunity for HintMD, it's pretty significant. As I mentioned, there's around 33,000 aesthetic practices in the United States with an average of 1.7 million revenue per year processed. That represents a $56 billion payment processing opportunity with around 500 to, or 0.05% to 1% payback transaction fee, or the opportunity for us represents basically a $500 million revenue opportunity for payment services for Revance to date. Next slide, please. So if we look at the value chain of how it's done today in the offices, when a practice processes a credit card, they'll pay an average 2.87% to 4.35% fee per transaction. Oftentimes we hear about these are different for Amex cards or card not present. But if you take break down the actual steps and those that control that margin or that value chain, what's in there is reseller fees, gateway fees, risk management fees, and process fees. Of that 2.87%, you have 50 to 100 basis points that are controlled in those 4 buckets that I just read. That's the area in which HintMD and Revance has access to margin. So there's a variety of activities that we'll be able to do with that 50 to 100 basis points that allow us to take revenue out of that channel, as well as balance kind of our relationship with the physician. So that stacks up to be that $500 million revenue opportunity by us having the opportunity and being a payback or a payment facilitator to have access to that 50 to 100 basis points of that transaction. Next slide, please. All in all, in a timing perspective, we've done a great job in launching in this COVID environment. Our original launch plans were to launch about a quarter earlier with the RHA collection. However, with access to the product during COVID and access to the offices, we made the prudent approach to delay by 1 quarter and hire our sales force slightly before that, around September timeframe. Since September, we've launched with 100+ sales force that's delivering the RHA collection to a unique group of physicians in the preview accounts, getting early clinical experience for select practices, as well as launching HintMD and building upon the install base of the organization prior to us getting started. We'll focus on this launch phase with this 1 product and 1 service out until PDUFA approval in November, and then focus on a similar cadence for Daxibotulinum injection, where we'll have a preview program allowing us to hone in on the messaging, get clinical experience, and then a full-scale push with the products and services offering in 2021. Next slide. So now I'll turn a little bit to the therapeutic franchise, which we're as excited about and actually has an opportunity to represent a larger revenue opportunity from a neuromodulator perspective for the global therapeutics market. Next slide. Currently, in neuromodulators, there's roughly 12 approved therapeutic indications for botulinum toxin type A products in the US and hundreds of possible indications, with half of those indications being in that, or excuse me, half of the revenue opportunity for those indications being in the muscle movement and pain arena, which is 50% of that $2.3 billion global opportunity, and then the rounding out of a third being in chronic migraine, overactive bladder with 12%, and axillary hyperhidrosis for 7%. Next slide. We look at where Revance is focused. We're currently focused first on cervical dystonia. which is roughly a $200 million opportunity or $340 million opportunity globally and growing, and typically treated by neurologists. We believe the strong data set that we have compiled in our ASPEN program indicate how the product performs in other large muscle movement disorders, and also a phase 3 program should be reading out for this in the fall. Top line results for the fall for our ASPEN program for phase 3. Next, our second area of focus in muscle movement is adult upper limb spasticity. That again is also treated by neurologists with a roughly $300 million global opportunity. Our Juniper phase 2 placebo-controlled dose-ranging study is fully enrolled with top-line results expected in early 2021. Rounding out our ongoing clinical programs is a white space opportunity in plantar fasciitis, which is currently estimated at roughly $250 million US market opportunity. What's interesting here is that there's currently no injectable treatment today, but 1 in 10 individuals suffer from some form of plantar fasciitis at some point in their life. We think this is a really compelling white space opportunity with the results from this phase 2 trial, which is expected to read out in fall of 2020. This data should be very insightful and informative on how DaxibotulinumtoxinA performs in this unique pain indication. Next slide, please. For cervical dystonia, I'd like to map out our CD data from our phase 2 trial and compare it to competitive products on the market with their phase 3 data, which is listed here on the bottom. We're using what we call a twister score, which is actually a 3-part composite that measures severity, disability, and pain from baseline. You can see across both doses of DaxibotulinumtoxinA for injection at the top. We had at the bottom. We had compelling acute results at week 4, and that benefit continued and did not follow the same trajectory of the currently marketed neuromodulators. While our study concluded at 24 weeks, we were still showing patients that had not returned to baseline. This response rate, combined with our large aesthetic trial data, continues to provide confidence and the data that DaxibotulinumtoxinA type A for injection will provide a very meaningfully differentiated product profile for both practitioners and for patients, allowing for less visits per year. And on the therapeutic side of the house, the healthcare economics of less visits per year are very important. Next slide. I'll turn it over to Toby to talk a little bit deeper about how we've explored different partnership areas and executed these in the past. Toby?
Thanks, Dustin. Let me first touch on our partnership with Mylan. Stepping back a bit, in the production of daxibotulinum, we make the active ingredient of Botox, then refine and add our proprietary peptide, creating the longer-lasting neuromodulator product, which is known as daxibotulinum. So we're using essentially a waste stream of our production of daxibotulinum here to produce the biosimilar in conjunction and partnership with Mylan. This partnership allows us to leverage our existing manufacturing infrastructure and to have access to the short-acting neuromodulator opportunity where Botox is indicated. And currently, Botox is a $3.8 billion product itself. We've had productive conversations with the FDA on this project based on the preclinical data we have generated so far and are looking to begin clinical work potentially in 2022. To date, we have generated $60 million in non-dilutive funding and have over $200 million in clinical, regulatory, and commercial milestones, along with high single-digit to low double-digit royalties worldwide, excluding Japan. Now turning to Fosun. We have granted Fosun rights to develop, commercialize, distribute daxibotulinum in the areas of China, Hong Kong, and Macau. They are currently studying daxibotulinum in both the aesthetic glabellar lines indication and the therapeutic cervical dystonia indications. And again, we've received over $30 million in milestone payments so far, and set to receive over $200 million in milestones plus tiered royalties downstream. Net, these partners are really well positioned with regulatory, clinical, and market expertise to maximize the downstream economics to Revance, and so far we've been really pleased with the collaborations. These collaborations have brought in nearly $100 million of non-dilutive funding since signing, with future milestones and royalties to come. Further, and strategically from a corporate perspective, this allows us to keep our core asset, Daxibotulinum, whole for broader potential partnerships in the future. Next slide, please, Gene. Before I summarize, I'd like to post our financial position. At the end of last quarter, we had $494 million of cash equivalents in short-term investments. We had guided a non-GAAP OPEX for fiscal year 2020 of $220 to $230 million. And those factors, we forecast our cash lasting into 2023 with nearly 66 million shares outstanding. Next slide, please. In closing, we're really excited of where we are and the position we are in the marketplace. We're really excited to launch our RHA filler and our fintech platform. We're getting prepared to launch the first new major innovation in neuromodulators or neurotoxins in over 30 years with the launch of Daxibotulinum product. We feel really good about the new normal of the aesthetic market and the fact that we're launching our products from a zero base as opposed to trying to protect revenue in this new normal during the COVID pandemic. Further, we have a number of key clinical milestones that we think will inform the transformative potential of Daxi in therapeutic indications. I want to thank you guys very much for your time and open it up for Q&A now.
Toby, Dustin, thank you so very much. Again, to all of our attendees, please send over any questions that you have for the Revance team using your questions drop-down option on your screen. You can chat those questions over so we can answer them. Okay, let's see here, gentlemen, diving right in. How are you going to market against Botox, which is obviously such an iconic brand?
Yeah, Toby, I'll take this one. It's really a good, it's an interesting thing. So the value of Botox is that it has a defined brand today, and that brand has been watered down a bit from commoditization. So based off of the place where they're at in the market, they've had to train more than 30,000 of these injectors. And what we've seen is price and margin coming down from the physicians, meaning they've made it so easy in their minds to get access to the product that it becomes a bit of a mass marketed product, right? So all the practitioners are having a difficult time to differentiate their Botox or their results from somebody else's because they really commoditize on price. We've done some unique things to where we're focusing on a smaller group of physicians that really drive outcomes or patient experiences over price and focus on delivering that in a manner in which we can scale. And so what I mean by that is because we're coming at it with a new product that's extremely differentiated, we have an opportunity to then provide an experience that the patient just can't get from Botox, just can't get from the dermal filler lines that AbbVie now represents. And so we are very cognizant of what Allergan has been able to process, but we're in a unique opportunity because of the innovation we have. And I worked at Allergan for quite a while, as well as a lot of our teams. And so we're very complimentary of what they've done to build this market. We feel like we're uniquely positioned with innovation and our time and approach to drive a new category kind of designed by innovation and experiences over commoditization. Next question.
Great, thank you so much. Next question is, why would you guys do a biosimilar deal if you have a better Botox? Doesn't that mean you'd be competing against yourself?
Yeah, I can take that too, and I'll let Toby kind of add on to this. I think what we look at is that the short-acting neuromodulator market, those folks that want 3 to 4 times a year patients will never be going away. So that market will exist. The long-acting category of having half as many treatments in the aesthetic space specifically will also always have a place. And so we feel like by providing us an opportunity to access that short-acting market in aesthetics, it's a prudent opportunity for us. Even on the therapeutic side, I think we need to note that with approval of the biosimilar product, we would gain access to all 12 indications in the therapeutic space that I mentioned with that one clinical trial. And again, the short-acting category will never evaporate completely. So this gives us an opportunity to take advantage of both of those categories and be prudent with our investment. Toby, would you like to add anything as well?
Absolutely. Just to echo a few of Dustin's points, in essence, right now in the aesthetic marketplace, there are already 3 marketed biosimilar programs with Jeuveau, Dysport, and Xeomin, and they're all stuck where they are in that short-acting category. We're introducing with Daxibotulinum a long-lasting, different value proposition for those who are experienced aesthetic consumers. And on the longer-acting, you know, again, our differentiation will be for Daxibotulinum will be in the clinical data, and there we will be able to offer a value proposition for payers going from potentially 3 or 4 or 5 treatments a year in a condition like cervical dystonia down to 2 or 3 treatments a year, which has an incredible value proposition. However, each one of those indications from a payer perspective has to be generated and garnered over time with that clinical result. So as Dustin mentioned, we'll be able to economically access all of Botox's therapeutic indications earlier while we continue to prove the value to payers of Daxibotulinum and grow that market over time.
Gentlemen, thank you. Great. Next question. What Revance assets are not included in the Fosun partnership in China?
Yeah, the only asset in China is Daxibotulinum. So that is our core asset. And to be clear, we continue and we will not transfer the manufacturing know-how or process to China. We'll continue to produce Daxibotulinum in the United States and then go on and export that to China to Fosun.
Thank you. Next question. It says, with the $492K in revenue, how was that derived?
Perhaps you're talking about the $494 million in cash and cash equivalents. And that's the position of our balance sheet at the end of Q1 this year.
And if that doesn't answer your question, go ahead and submit it over differently, and we can elaborate on that. Next question: what is your international strategy? Could you guys elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think I can take that. I think our approach has been to keep Daxibotulinum asset whole as much as possible. However, the opportunity with Fosun presented itself, the right opportunity to carve that out and to have that partnership, both from a fiscal responsibility and an access to the local market. Having lived in Shanghai myself, I think we understand the value of that market and the opportunity for us to move quickly there. Beyond that, we're exploring the opportunities of focusing first our capital in the North American market and going that alone, both on the aesthetic side and the therapeutic side. And we'll explore opportunities as they come over time for the international expansion. As part of our transactional opportunity with Teoxane SA, we reserve the right in the U.S., as we mentioned, to distribute their products. They also have a first right of negotiation for those affiliates where they have about 8 now, where they have a direct access market with Teoxane and their dermal fillers. They have the right to negotiate with us as it relates to be our distributor. We'll evaluate how we do affiliates and partnerships over time, with our focus right now being on the North American market. Toby, anything else you'd like to add?
That's an excellent summary, Dustin.
Thanks.
Next question, how much per unit in medical spas?
How much per unit is medical spas? I assume they're talking a little bit about the toxin market, the neurotoxin market. What's interesting about that is that the physicians and the consumers, or excuse me, the physicians or providers ultimately provide the opportunity to manage price directly to the consumer. There's an extremely wide range of pricing, And some price it per unit, some price it per area of the face, and some do treatment pricing. And we find that that commoditization of both the toxin market, the Botox, and some of the competitors is what provides the right opportunity. The national average for Botox cosmetic in the United States, I believe, is around $12 per unit. The average units per patient goes up to probably 40 or so units per patient of that specific neuromodulator. But there's some that you see it as a loss leader at $8 a unit, and there's some that you see it as high as probably $30 a unit in certain markets. So it's a variety. And that focus on price, again, is what provides this very unique opportunity for Daxibotulinum. With innovation, we can change the paradigm to focus on the outcome and the treatment, almost like a haircut, right? When you go get a haircut, we pick a select group of providers in the category or segment that we believe will deliver the results, and we just pay a fee. But today, the neurotoxin market, it's become a bit of a widget or a commodity where you're trading on price. We think this downward pressure allows the unique opportunity for Revance Aesthetics to create a new category.
Thank you so much. Next question, how are you involving the health payers for Revance Therapeutics?
So on the therapeutic side, we've done initial research projects with both our cervical dystonia and upper limb spasticity diagnosed or indications, and we found the results to be quite compelling. What I mentioned is the healthcare economics of a product that would take number of visits out. So let's say, for example, today, which is on average, the neuromodulator products are treated every 12 weeks on the dot for both cervical dystonia and upper limb spasticity, because those patient effects wear out. And so it's debilitating. So they need to go back as soon as the payer is willing to pay, which is around that 12-week time frame. So they go back they go back 4 times a year regimented. If the data continues to prove positive, which we believe it will, if you're able to remove 1 or even 2 visits per year, the impact on that is significant to the healthcare system. Because as you might imagine, those patients are getting procedures and fees beyond whatever indication for cervical dystonia. And so we're continuing to partner closely with them as we package our final CD data or cervical dystonia data for phase 3, work very closely with the payers to establish our appropriate strategy moving forward upon launch.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. Phase 3 on toxin A, do you still need to do any live trials? Has the NDA been filed?
So when they say toxin A, I assume they mean our glabellar lines. Our glabellar lines program has been submitted and is complete with a PDUFA date of November 25th. The other would be our cervical dystonia product, which is completion of phase 3, which we'll be announcing top line results at the end of this year, and then we'll ultimately file after that.
Great, thank you so much. We do have time for a few more questions, so if there's anything else that you guys would like to send over, please go ahead and do so. Next question, how much share do you think you can take?
Well, the good thing is I get to not answer that question right away from a competitive perspective. So Toby, I think you want to talk a little bit more of the guidance in terms of how we're providing that right now in the launch phase.
Yeah, I think that we think about that over time and how we step into it and from a dollar share, because again, what we're providing is a premium product. So we don't think of this as sort of a consumer. We think about providing a higher price product. So you think about Tesla doesn't own the market per se in terms of kind of the number of cars they sell, but they sell highly profitable, higher expensive cars. And so same for Daxi. And most analysts, if you were to look at analyst reports, that when we kind of get to peak, they're talking between 20 and 30% of the market share for in the aesthetic marketplace. And then north of that, given that we have, when we generate really positive therapeutic data where there's such a compelling case for payers to make that switch to the decreased frequency of dosage.
Thank you. Looks like we have 2 more questions here. What is the metabolism breakdown compared to Botox?
So metabolism breakdown, I don't quite understand that question. For neuromodulators, typically, I believe, once they're injected, the neuromodulator is untraceable in less than 4 hours. I think it's fairly similar to that of for daxibotulinum. I can't speak to the specifics, but I will say that the safety profile and the advance of profile and the immunogenicity profile was all in line with currently marketed neuromodulators. We're able to provide different efficacy, a meaningful duration of effect difference, without having any meaningful difference in the safety or adverse events in our clinical trials.
Yeah, and I just taking a giant step back, neuromodulators are one of the most potent drugs that are given to man. And so when you think about the amount or the quantity of neuromodulator that's in a particular vial, it's like thinking about the amount of maybe dust that's flying around in your room right now. It's very, very tiny. We're talking about fractions and fractions and fractions of grams. So it's tiny amounts. Neuromodulators have been on the market for over 30 years, and with no adverse events on sort of the approved products. And our product in the most extensive glabellar line study has had no difference. So we're very comfortable about the safety profile.
Thank you. Next question. Is the HA filler partnership limited to the U.S. region only, or does it include other regions?
It's a great question. It is limited to the United States only at this time.
Thank you. Last question. When do you expect to be profitable?
Again, this is the CFO question here, and we have not guided to windows of profitability, but if you were to look at analyst models, they're showing break even in the 2023 to 2025 timeframe. And really the big swing factor and why we're not pinning this down more is it really depends on the scale and velocity of our investment into clinical programs for the next leg of our stool, the therapeutics program. So we could constrain our growth by, titrating our investments slowly over time in therapeutics. But should the data bear out to be transformative, like we hope, we're going to be managing that. We've always taken a prudent approach to monitor sort of our OPEX and fine tune it. But we think that there's a lot of potential for this, and we'd like to see how the data shakes out from some of these pivotal clinical reads that we're getting in the fall and early this next year.
Thank you so much. That was the last question. So did you guys want to have any kind of final touches out there before we sign off for the day?
From my end, I just really appreciate the time and the opportunity to talk to this audience. Jeannie, myself, Dustin are always available to kind of follow up as you dig deep into this. I think it's a really unique opportunity where the science is proven, and now we're really out there competing in a large, established, growing category with the first ever differentiated products. And we're really excited about that. And we've got some great team, talent, and delivery. The other thing I'd just like to note is, we've had a lot of success and a track record of success. Dustin's mentioned his experience with Allergan. We've recently been energized last October. Mark Foley, an experienced CEO of the Cool Sculpting or the Zeltic Corporation, joined as our CEO and has really catalyzed us as we move into this commercial phase of our investment. But again, really appreciate the time and your attention and great questions.
Thank you so much, Toby and Dustin, and to everyone that attended today on behalf of Family Office Networks. We thank you all for joining. This is Lindsay. I will be following up with all of you individually, so if there are any further questions, I would love to get you in direct contact with the team. Thank you so much, and we hope you guys all have a great day.